The shooting of Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, on May 15th was a clear move by hidden forces around the world that represent global finance to intimidate all politicians and leaders and determine the fate of humanity. The shooting of Prime Minister Fico was an unmistakable act of war. This war has been launched in secret against those who have worked to reject the World Health Organization's infamous pandemic treaty, a false treaty created by organizations pretending to be governments that provides the rich and powerful unlimited powers. It does so by creating opaque multinational institutions run in secret, which usurp the rights of citizens, of local governments, of nation states, and of all institutions of civil society that refuse to bow before the puppets and the puppy dogs that are propped up by the hidden hands of the money changers. The WHO Pandemic Treaty will do so specifically through revised international health regulations that introduce to our world a modern form of slavery. We may not understand or agree with everything Prime Minister Robert Fico has said and done, but we should be clear as to the message we have been sent through his shooting. It is a fact that Slovakia has rejected the pandemic treaty and that the administration of Prime Minister Fico has launched investigations into the corruption surrounding the COVID-19 operation, the vaccine regime, and that he has personally called for investigations of the deaths that have resulted from those vaccines and other actions. Those moves were connected with efforts to reject global mandates for the control of energy and of the economy, supposedly in order to prevent climate change. Those mandates are not aimed at protecting the environment, but rather at creating absolute dependency on multinational corporations and banks for survival for all the citizens of the world. This shooting is an act of war not unlike the shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on June 28, 1914, almost exactly 110 years ago in Sarajevo, just south of Slovakia. This event is tied to both globalist efforts to destroy civil society and to render all inhabitants of the earth as slaves, and tied to nationalist battles between NATO states like Germany, Britain, and the United States, and Russia and its allies and associates. We do not know the full story yet, but we can be sure, as the old saying goes, that all wars are bankers' wars. The cancerous growth of private equity and investment banks that has captured control of the government of the United States and that represents a handful of the richest families in the world has once again crossed the Rubicon in its campaign to destroy humanity, and we can be certain that they are making it clear to the entire world through this attack that any political figure who dares to oppose their campaign to enforce universal slavery, that they will effect by seizing control of food supplies, energy, transportation, information, money, and land, and combining that operation with the control of the human mind through mindless entertainment and news, and of the human body through vaccines and foodstuffs, that any such person will be extirpated. I look around at the other candidates for president, expecting them to recognize the danger inherent on this declaration of war against us, hoping that they will denounce this crime for its true meaning, and that they will expose its purpose and they will stand with me against the rule of global finance. But sadly, this attack has had, so far, the intended effect of increasing even more the already towering cowardice of politicians. Yet, this shall not stand. I speak to the citizens of the United States and to the citizens of the world. To my fellow citizens of the United States of America, I call on you all to recognize this declaration of war for what it is, a war of the few against humanity itself. We must stand up to this rule by a handful of the rich on their yachts, on their private islands, and on their jet planes. And we must reject their push to destroy our bodies through false international agreements that neuter nation states like the WHO Pandemic Treaty. That means that our entire defense and intelligence system must be transformed, must be rebuilt from the ground up, starting today, so as to defend the citizen and to resist oppression by the powerful. It matters not if it be but a handful of the brave who will lead the first charge against great odds. I promise you that I will be there with you, and that there will be others who will follow you coming forwards. Go forward bravely and transform through your courageous acts the very firmament that shelters our humble lives. Security and defense will no longer consist of the protection of the profits of the rich and the powerful, or of the promotion of multinational banks and corporations over citizens and over nature itself. Remember that most of these multinational banks and corporations behind these attacks, although they may seem American, are in fact incorporated abroad, pay little or no taxes, and their stock is held by the wealthy few around the world, psychopaths who have only contempt for local governance and human sovereignty. Why should our children shed their blood or others' blood to generate profits for the few at our expense? No, security must be entirely about protecting the minds, the bodies, the intellectual autonomy, and the spiritual integrity of the citizens of our country, in accord with the words and the import of the Constitution. That means, fellow soldiers, that you are entrusted to defend the people, not the rich, and it means that those orders that task you with promoting or defending the totalitarian regime of the pandemic, or of other IT and information totalitarian moves, must be rejected, and when necessary, a new chain of command that represents the people in accord with the Constitution must be established. You, fellow soldiers, are sworn to defend the Constitution and, through it, our citizens. There is not a single word about privately held organizations like the World Health Organization, billionaires, investment banks, private equity, or the Democratic and Republican parties to be found anywhere in the Constitution. Once we are clear that the United States is a constitutional republic that reports to the citizens in a democratic manner, then we will be ready to clean house, to cut all ties with the financial interests who have taken over wide swaths of our government, and to respond effectively against the war on human sovereignty represented by this attack on a single individual politician. Remember that similar attacks are taking place right now in the United States as well. To the citizens of the world, I ask for cooperation. We must form an international alliance against this full-blown techno-fascism, and we must fight on every front against those powers who strive to reduce citizens to idiocy through foolish education and insipid journalism, and to pump their bodies full of poisons using foods, drinks, medicines, and the very air that we breathe. we must do so without falling prey to the canny political operators who would trick us into joining movements that are controlled by the very same financial interests who would slaughter us. Join with us today, not as part of a corrupt alliance system that brings profits to the merchants of death, but rather as part of an alliance of the citizens of the earth everywhere who stand for truth, for freedom, for sovereignty, and for the intellectual, spiritual, and bodily integrity of the citizen at every level. Do join me, join us in condemning this attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico, and also join us in organizing the next step, the next stage of citizens' resistance based on America's most sacred text, the Declaration of Independence. That Declaration of Independence states, unambiguously, based on natural law dating back to the distant past of humanity, when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing inevitably the same object evinces a design to reduce the citizens under absolute despotism, it is the citizens' right, it is their duty to throw off such a government and to provide new guards for their future security.